Stanley, haven't we?
Yes, when you reach our age, that's all you talk about. It used to be we talk about women, restaurants, cool bars, rock bands. Now it's like kidney stones and my foot hurts,
Oh
whatever.
my God. But you've been having pretty good luck because you haven't
I've
had
never
to
had a
go under the
problem.
knife, right?
Uh, So last year, I didn't even have a primary doctor. And that was pretty funny. I went in after the kidney stone and had a physical.
Yeah.
And the guy's looking at my chart going, it's really funny. He says, I'm looking at your chart. When did you have your last physical? It's not, I can't find it on here. I said, well, I'm going to be honest with you. It was 1982. He like fell out of his
On.
chairs. And I said, well, I never had anything wrong with me. I feel great every day. I never had a problem. Nothing hurt. So why go see the doctor? You guys will find something.
You
So
literally hadn't seen a doctor?
no,
Oh
for what?
my God. That's absolutely crazy.
Yeah.
That's
So yeah,
that's
but it was pretty
crazy.
crazy. So I'm
So
in pretty good shape outside if I found out I have borderline diabetes, but I was probably destined to get that anyway because my brother has it. So
so do you have to do anything about it?
just take a couple pills, metformin. That's it. Not eat certain things. So, you're not supposed to eat sweets anymore. So I keep that to the bare minimum. And then I'm not real religious about taking my blood glucose level every day, but maybe once, twice a week I'll stick my finger and see what it says. But yeah, you know,
Well, you've been
it's
doing,
not a
you're pretty lucky. Things have been going your way. Not
well,
having
I've
to
been
have your kidney stone taken out, not your MRI came back good on your back, right?
I'm assuming it's pretty good. I think there's one spot in there that it said it moderate to severe, whatever the word was. So I
Stenosis.
just
Stenosis is the nasty word
it's
that I.
probably that, or
Mhm.
I was just to find out if I had sciatica. So
I
that's the
have
other
that.
one. Oh, do you? Yeah, I'm thinking it's probably that, or it's giving me that because it was in my leg. It wasn't really my back.
Yeah.
And outside that, I do everything. I mean, till I had, the back thing in November where the pain came out of nowhere. I was doing what I do every day. It's just this time went sideways. And we've got a huge backyard. It's like 2/3 of an acre. And you're talking to the gardener here. And we have a slope that goes up about 40, 50 feet. I can't tell you how many times I slipped because it's like ice plant on the hill called Mayaporum. And I slipped and
Uh-huh.
fell and rolled all the way down to the bottom, got back up and went up and finished the job. But just par for the course from whatever.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
I
But
know. You just tend to think you're indestructible. That's the problem.
are you active? Are you physically active to be so healthy at this stage of
I
things?
I walk a mile and a half a day. Half the walk is up a very steep hill, and then it flattens out, and then it circles around and comes back down. So I do that every day, and sometimes I add weight. I carry my dog. I carry him up the hill. He's just a Maltese, but he gets towards the end of the taking him up there. He starts getting heavier than his 6 pounds. So, but yeah, I'm pretty active. But really active until recently. I would have been skiing probably, but I don't do that anymore. About 4 or 5 years ago, I was worried about my knees, although they're fine, but I just worried I shouldn't be doing this because if you do something really wrong, then you're into some serious pain and knee replacement. And so far, they haven't replaced anything on me.
Stanley, you are not allowed to get old because when I think of you, I still think of you as 9 years old. So
I do too. In fact, I just found a commercial. I was at an event the other night, and I was with Ann Jillian, and we've
I
known each
saw that
other.
photograph.
Yeah, yeah. So I've got the. I think I put a photograph up and a picture of us when we were younger. We were
Yes, you
7.
did.
So
Fabulous.
I was referencing this Chevrolet commercial we did together in 1958, I think it was.
Oh,
Anyway, I've got
God.
the commercial now, so I'm going to post it.
Oh,
I'm going to
that's
post. In fact,
fabulous.
I'm sending it off to her. I just put it on this drive, so I'm going to send it
Sweet.
over to
Lee
her house.
Purcell, by the way, is saying hello.
Oh, she's so sweet. I love her. Boy,
She
she's so
is so
pretty.
sweet.
Oh my
She's
gosh,
so pretty.
she
And
is
she
so pretty.
defies all, there's no way she looks
I
35.
know.
She's crazy. She's
I know. I
gorgeous.
know. I know. Makes me
So
wish I was single. but I'm not.
Oh, Lee, did you hear that? There's lots of love going up now. No, you don't. So, that's pretty remarkable. I was reading about you and Paula. You guys have been together, what, 26 years? Is that so?
It's going on 26. We've known each other 26 years. I met her at a Halloween party. My thing about Paula that I always tell people, they go, well, how did you meet her? I said, well, it's a little bit of a convoluted story.
Oh, wait, I lost your sound.
Oh, can you hear me now?
I can.
Okay. I said, if John Lennon hadn't met Paul McCartney, I would have never met her.
Wait, what?
Yep. Okay, so flash forward, there's the whole Beatle thing.
Right.
Flash forward to 1995. Well, 95. Remember when the anthology came out? And there were all those, faux Beatle bands all over the place. Well, the year before, I met some guys in a Beatle band called the Mop Tops. Became friendly with one of them, the guy that played John Lennon, a guy named Joe Stefanelli. And he kept inviting me to things, and we go out to dinner or bars and hang out. Single then, and so I got invited to an event. He called up and said, hey, we're going to be playing at this club 21 Below in Santa Monica. Would you like to come? He says, the person who's employing us to do this says she knows you. And I was like, oh, really? Said the name, and I'm like, well, it doesn't ring a bell. But anyway, so with some other friends, I said, hey, you guys want to go to a party? There's going to be a party at this club. So we went on Halloween night. I walked in and saw Paula. Of course, she was dressed as looked like Barbara Streisand or Marilyn Monroe. And I just came.
Wait a minute, Stanley. There's a big difference between Barbara Streisand and Marilyn Monroe. Now,
well, blonde hair is what I meant.
Okay.
And so I saw this blonde over there, and she was really pretty. And I just thought, wow, I'm gonna go over and talk to her. So I bid my friends to do and went over there. And then this girl shows up right when I was doing good. And goes, oh, hi, I'm Debbie. It's my birthday party. And I'm like, oh, wow. Okay. Yeah, I sort of remember you, but I guess she was in high school, and I must have known her from high school. But anyway, I didn't know them, man. She wouldn't go away. And it was kind of weird because I'm trying to get this girl's phone number. And meanwhile, she's there, and it's making it weird because she's thinking, is this guy's girlfriend? And what is he doing? He's hitting on me. And meanwhile, this girl's acting like she's his girlfriend. And then I went over to talk to my friends, and then they announced that they were dedicating a song to Stan and Debbie.
Oh, no.
And I'm like, man, this can't happen. So I went in the men's room and hid in there till it ended, and came back out a little bit later. And anyway, I missed my dedication dance with Debbie. But yeah, I just told her, look, I'm with somebody, and you're better off picking another guy. And then I went back over and talked to Paula, and I thought, hey, listen, what you think is happening isn't, but I'm going to have to leave because this girl is obsessed with me, and I don't know why, but could I at least get your business card, And so she gave me her business card, and it turned out she was an attorney, so I thought I'd probably get sued or something. And I called her the next day and invited her out on an official date. A couple days later, I think it was Friday night, and we went out, and that was that. About a week later, her dog came over and never left. And
but wait a minute. I also saw that you got married 6 years ago. So what's that? What's that 20-year lag
this
going?
Was 1995.
Yeah.
In 1999, we were in New York because I used to go to New York 2 or 3 times a year. And 1999, I decided to propose. So we went up to the Empire State Building, and on a Saturday at noon, there wasn't even room to stand, but I had to get down on my knee, and I proposed, and she said yes. And so we got engaged in 1999. And anyway, I had a business I just started, and it was just like ridiculous. And then she's an attorney, and she already had kids, and I had a kid, so there wasn't any biological time bomb cooking there. So time just went by, and so by 2015, that's when we got married. So
what gave you
ask us, when did you get engaged? I used to say, well, we got engaged in the last century, but to be real about it, it had changed from 1999 to 2000. So officially, we got engaged in the last millennium.
Wow. Okay. So,
Got it?
so what, okay, so what kicked it up in 2015 that you finally said, okay, we're doing this now?
We had some time where we could get away from what we're doing. She's pretty relentless. Like, she's a criminal defense attorney. So she's always in court and busy, and clients drive her crazy. I had this project I've been working on for forever called The Actor's Journey.
I want to
And
ask you about that.
yeah, so it was driving me crazy. And then we decided we wanted to move from LA. So that was another biggie because I'd lived in my house where she was now living for 42, 43 years. So we knew it was going to be a monstrous move. And anyway, yeah, so that's what happened. We got here settled, and they said, why don't we do it? Oh yeah, I forgot about that. So she's been wearing an engagement ring for whatever, 20 years, 15 years, something like that. And had we not been married before, there would have probably been more a sense of urgency. And I think that was the one thing that, not like I was pushing her or trying to see what kind of person she was. Because I've been with other people, and and like 5 minutes after you meet them, it's like, let's get married, gotta have a kid, let's get married. And I'm like, lose my number. I don't know you. Need a little bit of time. And I always felt pressured. So she never bothered me. Not once. Not once.
Wow.
I guess she figured, when I wanted to do it. But then again, like I was saying, she already had kids from another marriage, and as weird as that sounds, she actually was divorced about 2 years, I think, before I met her from some guy. But she was saying I was married before. That's where my kids are from. And anyway, somewhere about a year into it, she mentioned the guy's name. I'm like, geez, that's funny. I used to know a guy when I went to school that had the same name. I go, and I'm thinking, well, this guy's probably down in Orange County. She says, oh, no, he lives in Studio City by the Studio City Park, which is where I live. When I was a kid, when I was like 13, my parents moved to the valley, and we literally, Barry and I, when we get off work, and I think that's why my parents bought the house, we could climb over the fence and be in the park. So we didn't have to get driven anywhere. You just climb over, and then, all our buddies would show up, and the baseball game was on, or football game, or whatever. And so we lived there. And then when I got married, and, we wanted to move fairly far from our parents. Not that I was upset with my parents. I just thought it would be a good thing to do. Well, the way it worked out was, if my parents' house was back to back with another house, and then there was another street. But had it been that house, they would have been across the street from where we got our house. So we were right next to that park, but one street over, which turned out to be great because by then I had a daughter. And she could go see grandma just by going through the gate, walking along that long fence that passed by this house where we knew the people. And then my mom's house and dad's house was right there. And then she would go through the other gate, and she was at grandmother's. And my dog and my cat did the same thing. It would go to grandma's house.
That's a pretty sweet deal.
Strange. But back to her second husband, she mentioned his name. And I go, well, I knew somebody in that. So when I found out Studio City, I said, did this guy go to like Milliken, junior high and North Hollywood High? She goes, yeah. I go, I know the guy. We went to junior high together, 8th grade. I met him, and we went to 8th, 9th grade at Milliken. And then I went to North Hollywood High, even though I was supposed to go to Hollywood High. He was always sitting next to me or diagonally next to me. And,
that's crazy.
We're kind of casual friends. Even weirder, his mom went to my aunt. It was her beautician. So,
okay, wait a minute, Stanley. How did you go to real school? I mean, weren't you on the set all the time?
We were on the set about 9 months a year. And then
that's a lot.
For about a month, we had a tutor to finish off the school year.
Right.
And then in February, they would start the next semester. It was in semesters in those days. And then I would go back to public school. I did that over Vine Street Elementary School.
So wait, what months would you be in public school?
Be there. I usually around the first week of February is when that semester would start. So February, March, most always April, and then beginning of May, I'd have to go back to work. But there was some years where I'd go back in April or earlier on because we shot more episodes. In the beginning of My 3 Cents, we shot 39 episodes a year. Towards the end, we were shooting 30 and finally, I think 26. So, we had more time off.
So when you're a really little kid, because you were on Ozzie and Harriet when you were like an amoeba.
Yep.
So are your friends on the set? Do you have friends in the neighborhood? Are they accepting you?
I had neighborhood friends mainly my whole life. I never really hung out with, child stars in those days. My parents, most of them didn't go to public school. They all went to Hollywood professional school, and they went 3 hours a day. And I'd heard about it and, brought it up to my parents. They said, no, we want you to go to public school. We don't want you to be segregated from real kids.
Good for
And
them.
I thought that was going to be tough, and it was. And a lot of fights, but it was for the best, really, because when your career is over, if you're a child star, if unfortunately that happens, you're going to be dealing with real people. If you haven't dealt with them before, you're going to have a surprise. So I always felt it gave me an advantage being there and just not thinking I was anybody special. I just went in, wanted to be accepted and blend in, and I did the best I could to do that.
Could you blend in, Stanley? Could you?
I was a human oddity. The first week I'd arrive and everybody'd be staring at me, and then some people became my friends, and then other words are faux friends. I'd just go, "Oh, look at my new friend, the guy from My Three Sons," and then they'd get past that, and they weren't really friends. But and then I always had the ones that I grew up with. There was some guys that I knew from my neighborhood. It was like my little gang, and I'm still friends with all these guys. One guy became a postman, another guy went in the military, another guy works for the studio. A couple of them passed away now, but yeah, well, I was friends with these guys my whole life, and we never talked about show business. With those guys, we just did what we did and got into trouble. And
but wasn't it even weirder once Barry started?
No, they just accepted me, how I was, and I never talked about it, and they didn't bug me. And I said, look, if you want to see what this is like, come with me. I'm taking you next Wednesday, so come down to set. And by noon they're ready to leave. I was like, this is boring. Let me out of here. This is what you do. I'd rather be home watching, Three Stooges. So they'd get over it real quick. It's because it's not for everybody. There's a lot of waiting involved. And then, the thing that made it sweet was when Barry came over. But, he had a career of his own by that time. He, was doing movies. He had done a Jerry Lewis movie. He did a movie with Jackie Gleason called Papa's Delicate Condition. He was an errand boy with Jerry Lewis. Did a movie called My Six Loves with Debbie Reynolds, and he was the same thing doing Ozzie and Harriet. When I left, they replaced me with him.
Okay, so how did this start, Stanley? So you're just this little kid. Do you want to go inside the TV, or does this just happen? Yes, I did. You did?
Nope. Where we moved, about the time I can remember anything, my parents rented a house on Formosa Avenue in Hollywood, and it had a backyard, and it was one of those old 1930 Craftsman clapboard houses. So that's where we moved. I had no say so in it, but we were in an apartment before that, and I think my mom was pregnant with Barry, so they wanted to move somewhere else. But in the backyard, somebody had a TV set, and it was like a wooden box, and it was pretty big, and had legs on it, but the TV was gone. It was just a hole. So I used to go behind it and get in the hole, and then invite my friends over and pretend to be a cowboy. I had some cap guns, and I just make up stories. It was a Western, then I got some puppets, and they, it was me and my puppets. So that kind of got me going. And then even in elementary school, I was going to Gardner Street Elementary School. They had an auditorium there, and they would do shows. And all I used to think about was being in one of those shows. I got to be the policeman in one, so I got to wear the hat and the wardrobe, and I had another cap gun. And my parents could see I had the bug to do that, but they didn't know what to do about it.
Well, and then what did your dad do, Stan?
My dad had a furniture business. He came from back east. That's a whole other story. My grandparents had a business, and my dad worked there. It was a burlesque theater. They owned two of them during the war years. Yeah, and my mom flew into town from Beaver Falls, Pennsylvania, and if you ever saw my mom, she was drop dead gorgeous when she was young. And she applied for a job at my grandfather's theater as a stripper. And
wow, I love this story.
Saw her, and his compass pointed north, and anyway, they were there till after the war years, and my dad decided they should come out to California, so they did. Came
Okay,
out
so
and-
what was the impetus to come to California? Was it showbiz or?
Well, it was to leave, that world behind, and they just wanted to go out on their own. My mom wanted to disassociate herself from having been a stripper. She took the job because it was hard to get jobs back then, and this was a
Sure.
high-paying job. And she sent money home to her mother and 9 or 8 sisters and one brother.
Wow.
So that was what she did. But she sort of sacrificed herself to do that. But she didn't want anybody to know afterwards, or she basically just called herself a dancer. And so most people just thought she was like a rock cat. And in those days, stripping wasn't, what it
Right.
became. Yeah, it was
Right.
practically, it was like you're out in a bikini and a top. And at the end, if you popped your top, you were facing the audience. You would just hold it up and walk off. And my mom was really, let's put it this way, she wasn't the shy retiring type. So she probably got a lot out of it. And I think I got those qualities from her because I was sort of, always pretty verbose and active and extroverted, I guess is the word. But anyway, how we got into showbiz though, when we moved into that house, she wanted me to learn how to swim. Apparently there was a swimming accident years before, and I guess I would have had a cousin, but he drowned. So we
Oh
went to a
my.
lady on Hollywood Boulevard that had a swim school named Jen Lovin, and it was a huge pool, and people went there. And after I was there a while, it's probably about 4. Then by then, I learned to swim when I was maybe 3. And she had a hole cut in the side of her pool underwater, had glass in it. And she would invite photographers to come out, and we'd put on these little shows where we'd be underwater driving cars and bicycles and swings. And the newspaper would come down and take pictures of it. She got a lot of magazines, McCall's, Vogue, Period
Wow.
Magazine, Look, Life, to take pictures. We were called water babies.
Wait, and how old are
And
you? You're like 4 years old or
four,
something?
4, maybe
Wow.
5. I
Wow.
was there a good while. And because of all the notoriety, a lot of Hollywood people started bringing their kids there to learn how to swim. And there was an agent there whose daughter, although she was much older, was learning how to swim, but she took a shine to me and kept talking to my mom about, me trying out to be a child actor. And, I think my mom liked the idea, but she held out for a while and finally said yes. And so I went out on some early things, and I was hired as an extra. I had no lines, and then I got hired onto an Ozzie and Harriet as an extra. And in the course of shooting this particular episode, Ozzie came up to me and said, "Hey, I want you to say this line. So I'm going to put a piece of tape on the floor right here." He goes, "I don't want you to look at it, but when you get to that spot, just stop, look right at me, and say what I told you to say. And I want you to turn left and walk off as soon as you say it." So we shot it about maybe 3 times, and then he said, "I want to get a close up." Well, I don't know what that meant, but he pushed the camera in, and I did the same thing again, and mainly my face. And so my line was, "Sure was mighty good camping in there, Mr. Nelson." The storyline was he was selling Christmas trees to make extra money in his backyard. He had a prospective client out there, and the joke was it looked like a forest, but then all of a sudden all these little kids come out with backpacks and sleeping bags, and we had been camping in his forest of trees. So he went up to my mom at the end of the day and said, "I'd like to have Stanley back. Be sure to go by my office and talk to my secretary and make sure you leave your contact information for me to get a hold of you." So my mom did, and about maybe a month later, we got a call, and I was cast again, and this time I had lines, and he just kept giving me more and
Had
more
you ever seen the
lines.
show, Stan?
Yeah, sure. No, I
Yeah.
saw it. Of course, I knew who Ricky Nelson was too. This was at the beginning of his career as a singer.
Mhm.
And yeah, I remember we were through shooting, but we went on to the next stage where they had imported about 100 teenage girls, and they set it up like it was a sock hop, and he was up on stage with his band and sang "Poor Little Fool."
And everybody's
And
screaming.
yeah, all the
Right?
little girls were screaming and swooning, and I was like, So I remember when I was working, I'd go over when Rick had his guitar there, and he was let me play it, showed me how to do chords and all that, and then I bought a
Wow.
guitar. So I,
You
one day I came,
had a record hairspray?
I
Did you?
hairspray, yeah, when I was about 12, these guys approached my parents with this brilliant idea. I think it was mainly because there were a lot of actors, Johnny Crawford, Paul Peterson, Shelley Fabares had songs, but they had real songs. I got to do Hairspray, which it was kind of a joke song. Some guy whose girlfriend's always shooting hairspray, and when we recorded it, the guy with the hairspray was like the mic next to me, and he's spraying in my face. Meanwhile, my throat was
Oh my
closing
God.
up. I know. Yeah. In fact, the guy that was he was the producer. They brought another guy in. It was Gary Paxton, who was also a singer. And I don't know what you know about 50. He had a song called Alley Oop.
I remember
Alley
Gary
oop,
Paxton.
Oop, 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 alley oop, oop. And he was supposed to be a caveman. There's another kind of jokey song, but it was a big hit.
Uh-huh.
And but yeah, he came in and helped or produced it for the two guys that I was in contact with. And like most songs, like that, it hardly went anywhere. It was like #1 in Stockton, California, or something. They invited me up and to do it, not live, but in those days we Milli Vanilli'd it. So
Right.
it was cool. I got to go up there and sing on stage to my own record. And I got to go with Dwayne Eddy, the guitar man,
Wow.
who I already knew, and because of my interest in guitars, I was just blown away that I was going to be doing a show with him. The other person was Eddie Hodges, who was an actor, who was also singing. He had done, well, I have to go back to that one, but he just finished doing a movie with Frank Sinatra called A Hole in the Head.
Wow.
And in that movie, there was a song called High Hopes, which he sang on with Frank. And then the last person, which was the best of all, was Shelley Fabares.
Wow. Did you have a crush on Shelley?
I had a crush. It was like she basically had to beat me off. Just get this kid off me. No, she was so sweet. But anyway, we did the concert, and fortunately, and she was just paranoid somebody would kick the record machine or it wouldn't work, and she'd have to sing live.
Oh God.
And Eddie Hodges could actually sing, so it didn't matter to him. But they had a party for us afterwards, and I guess by then it was about 9:00. I got to the party, and I remember we sat down in the booth. And the next thing I remember is waking up in the hotel room. I was young, so I just passed out.
Oh.
I know, so I didn't get to party with everybody. It's funny because I ran into Shelley Fabares about, I guess it was last year. Went to the P.O. box, and I was with my friend, and he goes, "Oh my God, that's Shelley Fabares over there." So I went over there and reintroduced, because she knew me, now, because my two sons have been on the air for 50 years, so she knew who I was. But
62 years, I believe it is now.
Is that what it is? Yeah.
Yes.
But she was cool. She's there, had like rainbow color hair and bangs.
Wow.
And she's totally groovy, man, and beautiful still to this day. She's like a knockout. And so anyway, we talked about 15, 20 minutes reminiscing. And
so was it like that? I mean, were you friends with like Jay North and Paul Peterson?
Yeah. All those guys are my friends. I've known Paul since I was 6 years old. I've known Jay since I was 6. I was up to be Dennis the Menace. I got a call back. Me, Jay, and I can't remember the other kid's name, but it was down to the three of us from hundreds of kids.
Wow.
And Jay was the one that got, Dennis the Menace. I got a booby prize. I got to be an extra on 2 or 3 episodes. And then, but you go, wow, had I got that, it would have been all over for me when I was 14, where, just held out. I mean, how the luck, it just shows you how luck. I did Ozzie and Harriet, and it was only because I did Ozzie and Harriet that I used to wander around the studio when I wasn't shooting. Even though I was a kid, I wasn't supposed to do that, but I did. And I went over to the next sound stage because they had a horse there. And I also was learning how to ride horses, and I was a pretty good rider, but I just, loved horses. And I think I was tuning up because I thought I was going to be a cowboy later, but that didn't work out so hot. So I would go over, and the trainer was really nice. He let me feed the horse carrots and showed me how to take these brushes and brush it. And so I would go over there, fairly often. And what I didn't know is that was the horse, Mr. Ed.
Oh, stop! A horse is a horse, of course.
Right. Well, that was him. Of course, he didn't really say a word to me, but
Wilbur.
And then on the next stage over, there was a dog that was working on a show, and it was a basset hound. And I'd go over there and play with him, and the trainer was a really nice guy. Showed me how to do hand signals. And he would do, if I do certain things, he would roll over or sit up. Anyway, so he was teaching me that. And anyway, one day when I was there, this older guy saw me, and I thought, oh God, and he's coming over. And so he goes, excuse me, who are you? And I stood up, stuck out my hand. I said, hi, my name's Stanley Livingston, and no wisecracks, please. And he laughed, and then he started talking to me, and we must have talked for about 15 minutes. He goes, huh. He goes, you know what? I'd
Don't
like to
say
meet
that
your
was
mom.
Lassie, because you're going to kill me.
No,
No.
no, it was old. He was probably in his 30s, the guy I was talking to. But anyway, he said, I'd like to meet your mom. And my heart sunk, and I went, am I in trouble? And he's like, no, but I would like to meet your mom. So, okay. So I took him across the street into Soundstage 5 where my mom was. And I brought him over to my mom and said, Mom, this guy wants to talk to you. And so I just kind of skedaddled away because I thought I was in trouble. And I just kind of watched him from afar. And, my mom was kind of like this, talking to this guy. And so they talked for about 15 minutes, and then he left. And anyway, what I didn't know is she was talking to Jackie Cooper.
Wow.
Yeah, so he was the star of a TV show where they had the dog, the Basset Hound Cleo, and he was the producer and director of that, besides starring in it. Anyway, 3 months later, he wrote a TV pilot for me called Skippy.
Wow.
And in December, we shot it. So anyway, that, I did this pilot for Jackie, and it never sold, and I never saw it because it's a funny story. The only way you could see it was my parents occasionally, or my agent, would borrow the reel from him. And I think they did when I did Please Don't Eat the Daisies. They wanted to see footage. And, when actors these days say, oh, I'll show you my reel, they meant videotape or DVD.
Right.
Now it's all file based. Back then it was actually a reel, and you had to go rent a movie theater after 12 o'clock at night, hire the projectionist to play it, and then people
Get
would come and see it. So that's what was going on. Anyway, so that went on for
you
about,
could get somebody to come see your reel at midnight.
yeah, if they were interested in you for a part, like for a movie or something. Well, for the movie, I didn't have to do that because they were at MGM, so that they would just deliver the reel to the casting person. The producer would look at it and, make a decision whether they wanted you or not, which was an advantage because most people had to come in and audition. I didn't, because I had this nice piece of film on myself. I was literally the star of this TV series, and
Wow.
was on camera like 90% of the time and had 90%
Wow.
of the dialogue. So because of that reel, it got my agent called and said, there's some people interested in you for another TV series. She goes, the problem's going to be you're still under contract to Jackie. And so if it goes anywhere, we're going to have to go to him and see if he'll release you out of the contract. But you still have another year left. And so that's what happened. They sent the reel over. The next day, the people wanted to hire me. And they had to call Jackie and find out if he was still planning to pursue doing anything with Skippy, and turned out he didn't. I don't know whether you know what Skippy is. Do you know anything about Skippy? Not the one I was in. Skippy was a movie made in 1934 with Jackie Cooper as playing the part of Skippy when he was 8 years
Wow.
old.
Wow.
And the director won the Academy Award, and I think the movie won the Academy Award. And
Wow.
Jackie Cooper won. Jackie Cooper is the youngest person ever in a lead role to win an Academy Award. He still is.
I thought it was
There
Tatum
was a
O'Neal. See, I know nothing.
nope, nope.
Wow.
Jackie still holds that, and there was another kid, Justin, and yeah, Justin Henry, I think was his name, for Kramer versus Kramer. But he was best
Yes.
supporting
Right.
actor.
Right.
So anyway, Jackie, thank God he let me go, and I was able to do this TV pilot, which happened to be called My Three Sons.
Okay,
And
now wait a minute, Stan. How you're a little kid, you have 90% of the dialogue. How, when you're 5 years, do you even read at this point? How do you learn your lines?
yeah,
How is
no, I
this
can
even
read.
happening?
I could read. I learned to read at a young age, and
And you could
even more
memorize your
mysterious is
lines.
I could memorize anything just hearing it a couple times and could go do it.
Wow.
And so, yeah, this was a pretty demanding part because of all the lines, and I had crying scenes, and
What?
it,
And
you
you
know, it
were
was.
able to do, okay, so obviously you weren't trained. This is your,
No, I had a drama. I mean, a coach who would help me with the lines, learn them because my parents didn't want to do that. And but yeah, she didn't really, give me any kind of dramatic coaching. I think when you're young, you just know what to do if it's in you. And I had it in me to be able to do those things.
how could you make yourself cry when you were
I
five,
would just
six
think
years old?
about. I had a dog that got run over, and I would think about the dog. And to this day, in fact, my other dog, I still think about him. He just died like 3 years ago, and every time I
Uh-huh.
think about him, if I think about it hard enough, I'll definitely get teary eyed. I just love this dog. And so you find things little, well, it's method acting. You just try and find something where you can tap into yourself with something that's still there that kind of evokes what you need now. But anyway, so I got hired for this TV pilot called My Three Sons. There was going to be a big star attached. They wouldn't tell us who it was, but they just said it's going to be unlike any other TV show because there's a major, 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 major movie star going to do this. And we're like, gee, I wonder who that is. Of course, I was hoping it was Roy Rogers because I wanted to be in a cowboy series. Well, it turned out it was Fred MacMurray, and Fred, he was at the apex of his career then. He was a huge movie star, highest paid actor in Hollywood. He had just come off The Cane Mutiny, The Apartment, The Absent-Minded Professor, Son of Flubber, The Shaggy Dog.
And that
So
was very unusual then for an
it
actor to go
was
from film
unheard
to
of.
TV.
It was unheard
Yeah.
of. Yeah, he sort of set the bar there. But he also, the reason he did it, he and his wife June had adopted twins, and they were 4 or 5 year old little girls now. And he didn't want to go off and do movies, go away for three
Mm.
months, 6 months at a time. Wanted to go to work at 8, be off by 5 or 6 o'clock, go home, and then shoot, and then be off during the summer for 3 months. And that's how we did it. He came in, worked for 3 months, was in every scene, and then would go away for 3 months, and then come back for 3 months at the end. And that kind of comprised the 39 episodes or a year worth of, My Three Sins, a season. So
Wow.
that's how it got done. Yeah, we, had a couple of false starts. We had a start where we had, they had Tim Consign, who was also in the Shaggy Dog. And then we had Bobby Diamond as Robbie. And Bobby Diamond was on, just came off a series called Fury
I
with Peter
loved
Graves.
Fury. Oh my God.
And we started shooting for some reason. It didn't work. We stopped and he got let go. And then they tried again with another actor. And we stopped again because they didn't think he could do comedy, or was comedy timing wasn't what somebody thought that probably the director. So they were looking around for another Robbie, and we were waiting till they got that part cast. And I remember my mom called a friend of hers who was an agent named Mary Grady and said, you should get Don down here right now. He's perfect age. He's 15, 16. They're looking for a middle brother. And so Don came in, read, and a couple days later, we were shooting with Don Grady. And
Did you do a chemistry read with Fred MacMurray? No.
no,
They
no, they were
wow.
happy with me just off that reel. So thank God I didn't have to do anything.
And
Um,
how were you with Fred MacMurray? Was he intimidated? He was this big movie star. Was it, you didn't care? You
no,
were just a
I
kid.
didn't care. I was just a kid. He was just another guy to me, playing my dad, just like the guy that I had just got through playing my dad, Edward Binns and Skippy. And, like when I was working with Ozzie, it was just, an adult and I was a kid. That's all it was. And he was nice to me, and he was nice to everybody. And then Bill Frawley, and I knew Bill Frawley because I used to play hooky to watch I Love Lucy. And Barry and I'd stay home and watch that and have a miraculous recovery at 9:30. But yeah,
Was he a crusty?
yeah, he
What
kind of pervade that outer crustiness, but I think inside he wasn't as crusty as people thought. And I never knew either of my grandfathers. I didn't know my paternal and maternal, grandfathers. And I set out to make him my grandfather. And
oh
he was, I think by that point, we really loved each other. I used to go to lunch with him every day, and sometimes at night
oh
baseball games, and we just hung out. And yeah, he was just a sweet guy, you know.
Oh, that's lovely. And
Yeah.
so at the beginning, Barry was not on the show. You had a best
Yeah,
friend.
Barry was still making the rounds and doing other things and amassing credits. And of course, they knew about Barry at some point because he would come to visit, and he'd be on the soundstage. And I think there was another actor playing a friend of mine then, Ricky Allen, played the character Sudsy, who was the kid around the corner, and we'd bicycle and go on Halloween. And what happened was Ricky, well, actually both of us, like when we would stop shooting for the day, there was an ice skating rink around the corner, a real old time one from the 1920s. It was absolutely huge, like a blimp hangar. And we go there to ice skate, you know, me, Barry, and Ricky, and sometimes other people. And that's what we did. But Ricky got involved in ice hockey, and so did I. I hadn't played in a game yet, but I got my ice skates and stick, and he got his front teeth knocked out, and I think the first first game he was in, and we were in the middle or just about ready to start shooting, and they had to replace him. And I think that's how Barry got in. They needed a kid in a hurry, and they created this character Ernie, and we were friends. It kind of didn't make a lot of sense. Ricky was my age, and he was my height, and meanwhile I got this new kid who's like little, really cute because he had glasses, buck teeth, and a Mr. Moto haircut. And I don't know what they were saying because they'd have classroom scenes where I'm in the class with Ernie. And so I said, gosh, either this guy's really smart or I'm really dumb. What is it? But audiences liked him, and they kept writing him into more shows. And Tim Considine wrote an episode for Barry to kind of star in. It was like, remember when all those 007 movies were out? So he's kind of like a 007 guy spying on us and all that. So
I don't remember that now that you say it. That's funny.
Yeah, he had a trench coat on. Yeah, it was pretty cool. So everybody really loved Barry. And then at the end of the 5th year, Tim announced he wasn't coming back. And the show was called My Two Sons. We needed a third son in a hurry. And well, it was obvious Barry was right there. So they concocted a story where he was a foster kid. His parents are leaving the country. They can't take him with them. And the Douglases take over and end up taking over custody of Ernie and adopt him, and he becomes an official son.
Wow.
And if you missed those 5 episodes where that story arc played out, and you didn't know what the hell happened.
So wait, so you start acting when you're like 4 or 5 years old. Barry, how does he start? How does he get into that world? Does your mother bring him into the world?
Yeah,
does he
well,
want
by
to go
then
in the
also,
world?
I also had an agent by then, and obviously,
Right.
She thought Barry could get work too, and he did. And when I was with My Two Sons, I had a guardian who would watch over me while I was on the set and take me to work, pick me up. So I left my mom free to go on jobs with Barry and interviews. So sometimes we would be working on the same days doing different things. I remember when in between seasons, one year I was doing How the West Was Won, the movie. And I was in Arizona working with Debbie Reynolds during the week. And then on the weekend, she would come back to LA and go to Paramount because she was doing a movie with David Jansen and who was the other guy? Cliff Robertson, called My Six Loves, and Barry was in that. So at the same time, not only were we doing separate projects, we were doing it with the same major movie star.
That's crazy. But also George Papard and Jimmy Stewart and all those crazy people were in How the West Was Won. Were you aware that you were working with these huge movie
by then
stars?
I was aware of it. Well, I mean, what I was stoked over, like I said, I from the time I was in that little TV box, I wanted to be a cowboy. And first thing I ever did, I actually did with Roy Rogers. I was in a Roy Rogers toy lariat commercial with him spinning a lariat and me standing next to him, a little kid spinning a lariat. And then he lariats me and pulls me in. So when I did that, I thought, wow, I'm off to a good start. I'm working with cowboys. And I thought it was all going to be cowboys and riding horses and shooting guns. But I never did another Western until How the West Was Won came along. And,
how was Please Don't Eat the Daisies and working with Doris Day?
Oh yeah, that was great. She was so sweet, and besides just being a great actress, she was smart enough to hang out with the kids who were playing her kids. So it seemed very realistic, and we would be comfortable with her, and she'd be comfortable with us. So we had a rapport going, and yeah, couldn't have been better. A little bit that way with David Niven, maybe not quite as much. He was probably going back to his dressing room to get a martini or something. And Doris
You've
was going
worked
back to
with
her to drink
crazy
a glass of milk. Yeah, yeah. No,
You've worked with you worked with Paul Newman and Joanne Woodward. I mean, what the hell? What? And you had a scene with Paul, didn't you?
I had a scene with Paul with Paul Newman and Joanne Woodward, his wife. Yeah, I had a couple scenes in that movie with him, and then I had another scene with the little babysitter that was babysitting us. We had a scene where the kid was playing my little brother. We're in a bunk bed, and the babysitter's Tuesday Weld.
Oh my
she's
Lord.
only 14 years old, so nobody knew who Tuesday Weld was going to be yet. But yeah.
You worked with Mary Tyler Moore also, didn't you?
Yeah, I did X-15. Charlie Bronson was the star of the movie, and he was, coming up through the ranks and was yet to be. And then The Magnificent Seven, I think, came about a year later, and then after that, The Great Escape, which he became, major movie star after that. It was also Richard Donner's first movie as a director. He was mainly directing TV in those days, Twilight Zone. And, what did he do? Actually, he knew Steve McQueen because he directed some of the Wanted Dead or Alives, which was done over at Four Star Republic with Steve McQueen. So yeah, he was there. And then I ran into Dick Donner later when I was about 23, 24 for a TV pilot, a TV movie with David Hartman. And again, I think that's why I got called in. In X-15, I had another big crying scene. So he asked for me to come in for this movie called Lucas Tanner. And I did. And of course, I had another big crying scene in that. I'm like, man, I'm sick of all this crying. So, yep, I had a relationship with Dick my whole life. He was just the sweetest guy, most generous director I've ever known, and we were friends off screen too, so it was really nice.
So were you watching, Stan? Because I know you my three sons ran, is it 12, was it 12
Yeah, 12 seasons, 380 episodes.
And so you grew up on TV. Were you watching because you later started to direct yourself? Were you watching what they were doing? Were you learning?
Yes. Yeah. I mean, I wasn't watching the show, but I was watching how the show was technically done. I was interested. That probably happened when I was about 15, 16. I just became enamored of cameras and editing and, the processes to get the work done, or where the camera was, or why the lighting was there. Why do we have a scrim over that light right there? Or, what's parallax? What are these cams inside the camera do? And, the lenses. So you learn what each of the lenses was capable of, and the film stocks, and, laboratory procedure, how you send your film into the lab so it can get processed and strike work prints, and, so they can cut it together and all that stuff. Yeah. So I had all these, older guys that were working on the show, the director of photography, the sound guys, and they were so generous, when they wanted to teach me. So, and I think they were happy that somebody was actually interested in what they were doing and, how you do it. And so, yeah, they really, and, in their day, a couple of people we had that were our DPs had won Academy Awards for movies. They're older guys now, and they just wanted to keep working, so they don't have to stay at home. And, director next door, I really, learned a lot from him. He was a guy named Charlie Barton. And Charlie had directed all the Amos and Andy's.
Oh.
But when I was a kid, it turned out he directed my favorite film from when I was, like 12, 13, 14. He directed this movie called Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein.
I'm sorry. That was the best movie.
It's the best movie ever. I just watched it 2 weeks ago.
I haven't seen that in years. Oh my God.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Get to pick his brain and, watch what he was doing on Family Affair. He was directing Family Affair by then. And then I had another guy, that worked on my three sons the last 5 years, who directed God, tons of film, but he was also known for TV, directed all the Bronson Allen, all the Jack Benny show, was
Wow.
Freddie DeCordova. So
Oh my
he was
gosh.
again so generous of how, when, why you do certain things, and and then a lot of it's political too. So you want to learn some of that, like how you handle actors that are giving you problems and all that. So yeah, I really got some schooling, started going to school at night, and a little more formally took classes. In fact, the guy that was teaching my cinema class and camera class was the head of the cinema department at CBS Cinema Center in the Valley, Peter Gibbons. So, the guys that were teaching in school at colleges were the same guys I was working with during the daytime.
Wow.
Yeah,
Wow.
so
And so
yeah.
now so you grow up on the show.
Mhm.
What is your life like when you're a teenager, when you're 17, when you're 18, you're on this television show? Do you
Well, there
have a
was a
normal life?
demarcation line. Yeah, I mean, till I was 17, and well, I guess I graduated high school when I was 17 and a half. So, till then I just hung out with my buddies, and we go into Hollywood and hang out and meet girls. I finally had a car, so it made it easier to go up and down Sunset Boulevard 100 times on a Saturday night. And another buddy of mine, he liked to go to the clubs, so we'd go to clubs together, and that was fun. And but I had to get serious by the time I was 18. I guess it was right around the time I turned 18. I went into Whiskey a Go Go, of all places, and I was just looking around, scoping out the room to see who you could meet or go over to, and see if we could get a phone number, ask somebody to dance. And I remember I saw a couple prospects, and then I looked up, and there was a girl in a go-go cage. And all I remember, my heart like almost came out of my body, and I went, "How do you meet her? That's the one I want to meet." I didn't know how to meet her, and I waited around, but she never came out of the go-go cage. And I figured she'd probably be a lot older than me, but what the heck? No harm in trying. So anyway, in those days, after the clubs closed at 2 a.m., there was only a couple places that were after hours you could go. One was Carolina Pines, which was at La Brea and Sunset, or across the street there was Tiny Nailers, but it was more of a drive-in. And then there was Canners, and then there was the International House of Pancake on Sunset, which was the preferred place everybody wanted to go to at 2 a.m. So I was in there one night waiting in this long line to get in, and I'm just kind of waiting. And I was with 4 or 5 of my friends, and so I'm looking over, and I went, "Oh, look, there's that girl that was in the cage.
Get
She's
out
over
of
there
here.
with a bunch of people in the booth." And I saw her like look up, and then she looked down, but looked up again. So it was like she must have seen me in there, because it was a look of recognition, like she had seen me somewhere. But then she looked back down, and I didn't know what to do, and I was probably too shy to go over to the table with that many people there. And so eventually they got up and were coming out. And I remember when she went by me, it was a very similar thing. She went like, and then went out the door. My friend, go, go talk to her. And I'm like, I can't. And you know, so anyway, flash forward about a month later, I was in there again, and there she was in a booth with a bunch of guys again. And I'm like, oh God, how do I do this? And then I was standing there. I don't know. I just couldn't do it. So finally she got up again and started coming. My friend, he goes, here she comes, say something. So when she walked by me, she put a piece of paper in my pocket and then just immediately went out the door. My friend reached in and got it. And yeah, I grabbed it back, and it said, "Hi, I'm Sandy. Call me." And so I couldn't wait till the next day to call, because it was like 3 in the morning by then. So obviously I couldn't call, but I called it. I waited till about noon. Just didn't think I should call. And we talked for about an hour, and I was going to meet her again at the International House of Pancakes that night. And I did, and sat at a table with her and a bunch of musicians who were, playing at Gazzari's and whiskeys and all that. In fact, it's funny, one of the guys, he was always a guitar. In fact, I think he was in the house band or the band they're called Eddie James in the Pacific Ocean. And
Mhm.
we always thought, wow, these guys are really going to be big. And the main guy, Eddie James, was kind of like a Mick Jagger. He would do the splits and come up. By the end of the act, he was just dripping sweat, man. It was like, I don't know where that much sweat came from. But anyway, it's funny, years later, I went to this play and it was called Zoot Suit.
Mhm.
And then I remember when I was watching, I'm going, that guy, that El Pachuco guy up there, where do I know that guy from? And I never could figure it out. I just knew I'd seen him and
Wow.
talked to him before or something. And then maybe 5 years later, this guy became a major movie star. And they, in the Sunday Times, in the calendar, they had a story about him. Anyway, Eddie James turned out to be Edward James Olmos.
Wow.
Yeah.
I didn't know where you were
So
going. That's
yeah,
hysterical.
I know. So it was like, oh my God, Eddie James in the Pacific Ocean. Because he was
Wow.
probably, if I ever came up to him, I'm sure he would have thought, this guy recognizes me from being in movies and, of course, Stand and Deliver, American Me, and I would have come up and gone, I know you, Eddie James in the Pacific Ocean. I
And
used
what
to eat
happened to
with you.
Sandy?
Well, Sandy and I met, and that was it. We never were apart, literally almost till we divorced. Every day, every night, and I fell in love, and
Wow.
she fell in love, and I was gone. I didn't know you
Wow.
could fall in love and what it could do to your body and brain.
So the
Just totally
son of a
amazing. So,
stripper marries a go-go dancer. I
isn't it?
love this.
And I never thought of that till years later. I go, boy, the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. Talking about my dad, that is. And my mom could hardly say anything. I don't think they were totally pleased. And she kind of quit right after, we met. And anyway, so that was, I guess, summertime. And then school, I started at college in September. We both went to college together, had some classes together.
Now,
And she
come on.
had some that
She
were
had to
separate.
know who you were when she first saw
At
you in.
first, I don't think she knew immediately. It was her friends that clued her off because
You
she
were
didn't
like
know
in
me as.
Team Beat magazine and like all that.
Yeah, but here's the deal. She was 4 years older than me, so she wasn't looking at the same stuff, my
I
age
see.
group was. In fact, I'm sure she wouldn't have even admitted she watched a show like My Two Sons. That would have been very uncool. That would be like, you know, being Eddie James and go, I got to get home because Ozzie and Harriet's coming on. You know, you're not going to do that. So yeah, we got married the end of that year. Following year, end of October, Samantha was born, and so by the time I was 19, I was working from 6 in the morning till 6 at night, and I had a deal where they would let me up at 6, because I was going to college, and I had an hour to get to school, and I was in school from 7 to 10, 4 nights a week. And each night I'd have to come home and do my homework and learn my lines the next day. And I had a kid.
Wow.
Yeah. So I was pretty busy. Right now I
Wow.
get tired just thinking about it. But plus I was,
Wow.
smoking weed. So I don't know how I did it. But plus I had just started a company with a guy, a production company. And,
Wow.
we were shooting commercials and music videos
Okay,
and
so that's what
corporate stuff.
that's what I wanted to
Uh,
ask you. When My Three Sons ends, what's your transition? What's your net? What do you transition into?
a brick wall. Well, I was still doing the acting thing and I thought that would continue. And fortunately for me, unlike my friends who had stopped when they were 14, 16, 17, I was almost 23 when it was over. So I went from 9 to 23.
Wow.
And for 3 years of it, I had a production company. So I was working when I wasn't working on that. And I was still, I did that Lucas Tanner movie. I did a couple other TV
What
movies.
was your production company doing in those
We
days?
we we would do commercials, mainly commercials,
Mhm.
PSAs, corporate stuff, corporate videos. Yeah, never really got to do a film back then, but that's like an actor, how you get your feet wet. You got to start somewhere. You got
Mhm.
to learn how to go out and shoot it and bring it back and cut it together and hand it over to the client. And hopefully they're happy with it. So that's kind of where I got started with all that, was putting what I'd learned from all those guys that I worked with to good use. And so that was going on. And then, like I said, I was still working as an actor. But yeah, the immediate upshot was when I found out I wasn't going back, it was a little bit weird because we didn't know that. We figured we would be back. But then the FCC came down with a ruling that year, and starting the next year, CBS and all the networks couldn't produce shows anymore. They could only exhibit them. It was an antitrust thing. It's like what
Wow.
they did with the movie studios years ago, when the movie studios started buying up theaters.
Mhm.
So they would only put their movies in their theaters, and they thought that was
Um,
antitrust. And before that, it had been a free market. The way it worked was individual producers would make product. Well, that's what it became. Individual producers would make product. They'd make pilots and try and sell it to the networks. So that's why the networks were not allowed to own and produce shows anymore. It had to be more of an open market.
mm,
So that worked, and but it cost my 3 cents because basically we got euthanized. I just said we can't bring you back, and we can only bring one show, and it's going to be Gunsmoke, not you. So that's what happened. But I remember when it was over, I was like, wow, it was kind of like for real. And, you know, you're in a show where 70 million people a week are watching you. So I couldn't
oh.
go anywhere without, being highly recognizable no matter what I was doing.
So
And
wait, so what was that like for you as a 22-year-old?
I
And
just
you're
didn't pay
already
any
married,
attention
you're
to,
already a dad. You
yeah, I'd be standing in line buying diapers. I'm just like the guy next to me buying diapers for his kid. Yeah, I just never let it get in the way of me doing things personally. I had no assistants, no nothing. I just pumped my own gas, drove my own car,
Mhm.
mowed my own yard, picked up my own dog poop. That's what I learned, so that's how I was. And but the strange part was the psychological part of it, of going. I remember I thought, well, I'll probably hear from my agent in a couple of days, and he'll be sending me out on something, and it'll probably be another TV pilot, where I'll be hopefully, a recurring character, a co-star, or maybe the star. But anyway, so I waited another week and said, hey, what's going on? He goes, oh yeah, I just gonna call you. He said, I was giving you some space. Do you think you're ready to go out on anything yet? And I'm like, yeah, I'm ready, man. So I thought, like I said, it would be a movie.
Mhm.
So he calls me back the next day. He says, okay, I got something for you. And I go, okay, when is it? And he goes, tomorrow, 3 o'clock. And he told me where to go. And I go, and what is it? Oh, it's a McDonald's commercial.
Oh, ow.
I know that's what my inner being said, but I didn't want to react. Well, he couldn't have seen it anyway because we just had phones in. So I go, yeah, perfect. Okay, I'll go. So I
Good
went
for
and
you.
got there, and people looking at me. It's like, whoa, chips here or whatever. But there was like 50 other guys that looked just like me in the room. So I thought, what chance do I have? I'm just one of 50 cogs in the room, and I didn't get the part, but it kind of was a wake up call that guess what, buddy, you're back to square one. 2 weeks ago,
Wow.
you're a guy that 70 million people watched. Nobody could give a rat's ass about you now, especially if the people in the movie industry. If you're going to get a job, you're going to have to go out and earn it and get it, and you better know what you're doing. And a couple of weeks later, I enrolled in an acting school in Hollywood called the Actor Studio with Jack Garfien, which was an offshoot from the Actor Studio in New York. He came out
Mhm.
here. He was married to not Blanche Baker, Carol Baker was his wife, and Blanche Baker was their kid.
Mhm.
And started studying acting all over again, and I took a directing class there, and I just thought I've got to take this seriously. So in between all my other things, I was doing that, I think twice a week, 3 times a week, to add to everything. But it was useful. And
Had you been, did you save your money when you were all those years when you were
yeah,
on this?
yeah, yeah, I didn't do crazy stuff. I didn't
Mhm.
never was into drugs in any way. Not to say I didn't smoke marijuana and do coke in those days, but
Mhm.
I wasn't really that all interested in it. And I drove a regular car. I didn't have Mercedes. I didn't drive limousine or in a limousine. In fact, the only exotic car I think I ever had. Well, I had it was a bigger car. It was a car probably you would think somebody older like a doctor would have, but I just like bigger cars. I had a Lincoln Continental, and then I had a Lincoln Mark III when they came out. The only reason I bought that is I was coming out of Hamburger Hamlet one night, and I pulled up next to this car. Wow, that car's cool. And I pulled up a little bit further just to kind of look in it, and it was Elvis next to me.
Wow.
And I felt like an idiot, looking in his car, and he looked over at me and he went like that. And I went like that. And then wham, this car took off. They had about 6 guys in it. And I thought, wow, that car was so cool looking. And so I bought one. I had that car for about 3 years, and then I bought a Lincoln Mark IV. And then like an idiot, somewhere along the line, I bought a Pantera, which didn't exactly, it looked like a Ferrari. It was about the size of a Ferrari, and it basically only fit my wife, my kid, and me in it. It was a tight fit. And then it only got 4 miles per gallon. So I only had it 2-3 months and got rid of it. Yeah, it was not a good family car. Wasn't a station wagon. So yeah, I bought a house right away. And, like I said, I lived like Fred MacMurray did, just an ordinary guy that happened to be on TV. I wasn't out partying. I didn't go to clubs anymore, and wasn't hanging with the fast crowd. So I just had my nice, normal little life.
Was your ambition then to act, to direct, to write?
Keep the acting, and just to get work for the production company. We'd get things here and there, and I had a partner, and we would execute them and hope somebody else called, or that we get a lead on something and show them what we had done, and hopefully get the job. So
what's the Actor's Journey project? Well, how did that start? What's that about?
Well, that's more recent. My whole life, even back then, but probably more when I got into my 40s, because I go around and kind of talk to people about acting or get invited to talk about it. And it always bothered me that there's so many places you can go to learn how to act, meaning the art and craft of acting. There's mom and pop schools here. If you live in Pea Ridge, Arkansas, there's somebody there teaching acting, right. I guarantee it. And, or you can go to the Actor's Studio, you can go to Yale or Harvard, and, they're all different degrees of expenses, but, people going out, taking enough classes to become competent, you're probably going to spend $5,000-$10,000 over the course of a year. And if you're going to a college, you're going to spend $30,000. And if you're going to Yale or Harvard, you're probably north of $100,000.
My daughter went to Tisch, $80,000 a year.
There you go. There you go. But what I was seeing happen was that kids come out, they're totally trained as actors, and there's sort of an arrogance that goes about with it, that they go, I know everything. There's nothing else that I need to know. Come to find out, there's this other thing that's a part of the industry, which is called the business side of being an actor. There's 3 things. You need talent, you need to be trained as an actor, and then somehow you've got to figure out what the non-performance skills you need are, because it's the non-performance skills that lead to the work. Right. And you're going to spend 95% of your time doing those things, and maybe 5% of your time acting if you're lucky enough to get a job. And just trying to figure out the industry and how it works and what this means and what's the order of doing things. And somebody said this to me, but I don't know what it means. So there's all kinds of things that people don't know on the business side of it. And I felt I did, because I had worked as an actor for so long and could see all the problems my friends were having. And then having worked as a producer and director by then, hiring people and watching people come into the audition, making all kinds of mistakes that I'm probably pretty tolerant and would probably help somebody out, or, correct them and try to, say, hey, look, if you're going to do this again, this is what you should do. But a lot of people, they just say thank you and you're out of the room and you don't learn anything from the experience. Anyway, I was talking to some friends of mine and said, I told them what I thought the problem was, that there, it doesn't matter what school you go to, nobody's teaching the business part of this, which is kind of a sin. You're spending all this money on this other part of it. And then most of the people never making it into the industry are unable to work because they make mistakes, or they do things, or they don't don't know what they should be doing, somebody should put a program together.
Mm.
And I kept whining about it, and somebody said, well, you should do it because you've done all these different things, and you have kind of a plethora of point of views on being an actor. You've been a producer hiring actors, you've been a director hiring actors, you've been a casting person, looking at actors. And I went, yeah, you're right. And well, they said, well, you should do it. And I go, well, I don't want to do it. Nobody's going to listen to me. I'm just one guy. And they go, no, because you know all these people. Go call all your friends and get them to
Wow.
be in it and teach it. Do it as an interview, because you know all their stories, and you need to figure out what you need, what you're trying to teach, and then have these people sort of tell their story, which illuminate all these different things that people need to know. And then that way it makes it more interesting. So I finally made the commitment to do it. It took me about 5 years to raise the money to do it, and then that part was a whole other thing. I had to learn everything about companies and corporations and Reg D 505 private offerings and writing private placement memorandums, company operating agreements. And I go, I didn't get in it to do this. But, when I was working with the attorneys and the brokers, somebody had to do it. And
Mm.
it's pretty easy to get ripped off in that area too, if you don't know what you're doing. So I had to take 2 years off, learn, basically giving myself an MBA in business.
Wow.
And then I started up again, and then called my friends. I called over 100 people, and they were all willing to step up to the plate to do the interviews for this program and teach the program. But 50 of them, more than 50 people, had either won or been nominated for Academy, Emmy, Golden Globe Awards. Two of them were the presidents of the two key unions. I had the president of the Screen
Wow.
Actors Guild, the
Now,
president
wait,
of
are
the
you
Directors Guild of
filming
America.
these? Are you doing them
Yeah,
live? What?
no,
You're
I
filming
didn't.
them.
I did the whole thing pretty much myself. Some days I had help, but I also had a really nice person kind of helping me. Beverly Garland, who was on the show as Barbara, Steve's wife.
Mhm.
She owned the Beverly Garland Hotel in North Hollywood there, or Studio City, I guess it is
Mhm.
now. And I was looking for a place to shoot, and we were having lunch. She said, well, why don't you just shoot it here? And I go, well, I can't, because I need a big room. I need a sound stage, basically. She goes, well, why don't you take the Franciscan room? It's huge. It's like 40 by 30, 50 by 30, I think it was. And the ceiling is probably 20 feet high in there. And she goes, I go, well, she goes, I'm offering it to you. You don't have to pay me or anything, you can just move in. And it was during that
Wow.
2008 blight where nobody was going anywhere, spending any money. Her hotel was like a ghost town. So I moved in there in January and started shooting like a couple days later, and left all my equipment there. I
Wow.
probably had about $100,000 worth of equipment that just stayed there. And all I had to do was unlock the door every day and go in, turn on the lights, turn on the air conditioning, and wait for people to arrive for their appointments, and chit chat with them for a while, and then
And
tell them
you
what
were
I was doing.
interviewing them, Stan?
And then basically I was doing I was a functioning basically like an attorney. I was leading the witness to where I wanted them to go, because I already knew their stories, because I'd already heard them. So I kind of matched them up with what I was trying to say, but something,
Mhm.
instead of just talking about it, to illustrate it in kind of a unique way or a funny way, and tell their stories that eventually add up to the things you were trying to get across to actors. So, and when I started, I had an idea of all the stuff I wanted, but I had to come back a couple times after that because I left stuff out. And I originally thought it was going to be a 2-hour program. Well, it turned out there was no way. After I looked at the
Mm.
mountain of material, I knew it was going to be about 10 hours long, and to just turn it into a multi-part series. So it ended up being an 8-volume DVD set is what we ended up with, an hour and a half on each DVD. So about 10 hours total. And it was tough. It's just that, when I first sat down to edit it, it was like, I think I had about 100, almost 150 hours of source footage.
Jesus.
And when I sat down, like I said, and I thought it was going to be this 2-hour thing. I'm going, so how do I cut away 48 hours. You just keep
So,
tuning.
so is this available to stream now? Are you going to stream it? Are
Well,
you...
that's where it's at. Yeah, I'm right in the process of we're about to upload it all, so it will be
Wow.
streamable. Yeah, originally when it came out, it was a DVD program that we were selling, and yeah, it sold pretty well. But I started another project, and I couldn't handle the business then, so I just kind of closed shop and took it off the internet. So yeah, hopefully in a couple months it'll all be up, and I'll be out. That'll be my day job. I'll be promoting that, talking about it, and telling people why they need this and recounting some of the stories. But yeah, it's a
So
pretty
will
amazing thing
people
because
for
you
the
see all these people's faces, like Henry Winkler and Michael York, or the people teaching you. Or one of the directors was Richard Donner, who, like I said, was a
fantastic.
buddy of mine. And then Melissa Gilbert, who at the time I shot was the president of the of SAG, and this guy named Jack Shea was a big, huge TV director, was the president of the Directors Guild of America. And then people worked behind the scenes to help me shape it. Gene Reynolds was a buddy of mine, and he's the guy that directed MASH and Lou Grant, and
So,
he was
so
kind of a
Stan,
mentor.
people watching now, when the time comes, how will they be able to, is there a way that they can reference, will it be on your website?
Yeah, there's actually some information. There's one page where I talk about it, but there's no link to it. I think there's a link to there is I took some little clips of some of the people that are in it
Mhm.
and put it up on YouTube. So if you go to the Actor's Journey and click on that, or the Actor's Journey channel, yeah, you'll come across Sherman Hemsley and Melissa Gilbert, and different people who they're all faces that probably are pretty familiar, and then other people behind the camera not so familiar. I mean, nobody is
Mhm.
going to know who Robert Iles is, but he won 4 Emmys for being a producer on Silver Spoons and God knows how many TV shows. Marsha Posner won 5 Emmys for, I think it was Designing Women, or it was either Designing Women or Golden Girls. I forget which show she was on, but they tell their stories. And that's, because
Fantastic.
there's just things that people need to hear, because you get despondent when you're an actor because it's not usually going your way. And, I thought one of the key things, we have there's 65 topics on there, so 65 segments we walk
Wow.
people through. It's not just when people speak of the business of acting, people think of 5 or 6 things like, get a headshot,
Mm.
get a resume, get a reel, join Screen Actors Guild, try to get an agent or a manager, try to get into SAG. But if it's only those 6 things, how come we have 65? So obviously there's a lot of stuff that isn't being taught,
Mhm.
or things you need to hear if you're going to do this line of work, so that you're comfortable doing it. And it all leads to making you more prepared to get work,
The
because it
business of
doesn't,
show business. It's
the
great.
business is show business. Because if you don't
Mm.
know how to audition, what's going to happen, come from that room, you'll never work, because that's how you
Mhm.
get work. But there's a lot of other things that go into that too. But some people think, well, I can't do it, I'm from here and it would never work out, or I live in LA but I wouldn't know the first thing, or I do this so I could never do that. And we have a segment in there called Everybody Starts Somewhere, and I had about, I thought, 6 or 7 of the best people who kind of talk about that, how they just came from these places you wouldn't believe and became actors. I said, well, there's one guy, he didn't come from acting school. He came from Folsom Prison and is now
Ah,
a major movie star. So, I don't want to hear your excuse. But other people were directors that became actors and didn't realize they wanted to be actors till they started directing, or vice
mhm.
versa.
Mhm.
And then, people that didn't know what to do in the room. And then, we kind of let a lot of secrets out of the bag of what people came in there, because you want to stay in the room and talk to the people besides read the sides, and just things that other people did that were of interest to the, casting people or the producer. They, oh, wow, what is that? And this whole conversation would start, and they'd get to know the person. And then based on that is probably why they got the part, not the fact that they could do the side. So,
Wow.
we
Yeah.
just really want to teach people how you do this. And it's complicated, but not if you, need to do it. I mean, if you really want to do that. But, and we don't like to see people out there spinning their wheels. Unfortunately, this industry forces each actor to reinvent the same wheel over and over again, where I
Mhm.
was just like, let's give the wheel to the people and they can just watch it, spend 10 hours of their time, and then go the next day and you'll know everything. Or at least you'll have this to look back on if you're confused again as to what to do or what it meant and then how
This
to
is
do it or
fabulous, Stan.
what not to do.
This sounds wonderful. And so,
Yeah.
all right, so people
So,
will be able
all
to
right.
get information on your
Yeah.
website about this.
Or call me back. We'll talk about the actor's
And all
journey
right, and I'll call you back. But
yeah.
before we go this time, we'll have one more thing to talk to you about.
Yeah.
And that's your art, which is magnificent. And I was telling you before we went on the air that Fields of Gold might be finding a way into my bedroom. We'll see. But
right.
so how did this passion, when did this passion start for you, and how did this develop?
I had an older brother who taught me how to draw and paint when I was like 7 years old. My parents sort of adopted this guy who lived at our house. He was a friend of my agent's at that time, and I think he was a runaway, but he lived with us. But he definitely had artistic ability, and yeah, so he kind of got me up and running. And then when I got to the sound stage, when I actually did start working after school, a lot of times there's nothing to do because you can't do stuff where you make noise. And art sort of became the thing that I did. So I started painting and drawing and doing whatever I could and just got better and better at it. And I guess by the time I was in my mid-20s, I was painting, I guess, professionally, because most of the things, well, I take it you've been to the website.
I have.
Yeah, so most of those were done in the 70s and 80s, maybe early 90s when I used to paint. And I took, high-res pictures of everything, sold the originals for good money. And I thought someday I'll syndicate it or, at the very least do lithographs and people can get copies of my work. And I found a great printer up in Canada, in Vancouver, Canada. These people are like amazing, because I had two or three of them down here and they just never could get the colors the same. And I was so frustrated. And then I figured out kind of what they were doing, but I wanted to break it off with them. And then I found this company and and then it's printed, but it's, I would say even the smaller prints, the paper alone is like $100. It's,
Wow.
yeah, it's like archival quality paper and it's German Hahnemühle textured paper that it's printed on. So it looks 1,000 times better than if you had it printed on canvas. Yeah, canvas always looks cheap to me, but this stuff, when you see the vibrancy of the colors and the quality of this paper is like mind blowing. So yeah, people order, whatever they think. It's hard, when it comes to art, so subjective that, oh, I've got a ranch house or I've got a modern house or I like flowers or, it just runs the gamut. Sometimes people just buy stuff because of the color scheme in it. And then, and then framing, there's no way to do that because, people go, oh, I only need bamboo or I need wood or I need metal or acrylic. So I let people take care of that. So they just order the one they want, the size they want. And I, put in the order and everyone is hand printed and I get it back. I inspect it and then I hand sign it, number it, and then flip it over, stamp it and put a, certificate number on, a serial number, and then put it back in the box and then ship it off to the client. But
So are you done with
good.
that? You're not painting
No,
anymore?
I'm doing that. No,
Okay.
because it's not very time consuming. I don't have, somebody orders it, it's transacted and I see what it is. And either the people that I have print already have the file. So I just call them, say, print that one and this is the size. Or I just upload the file if it hasn't been printed before and then tell them what size they need. And it generally takes about a week to 10 days for them to do it.
But you're not physically painting anymore.
Not anymore. I don't have the, the place that I had a studio at my other house. I guess I could have one here, and maybe I might, it's like I used to do stained glass too, but I didn't want to confuse people. So I took the whole little section on my website away with the stained glass because people wanted to order stained glass and you can't ship it anymore because of the cost of the shipping just made it like an impossibility where back in those days I could make something that was 24 by 36, which was kind of the standard size I worked in unless somebody wanted something custom. And then, but it would have to be put into a, frame, put into a wooden crate and then shipped. And even though it weighed 75 pounds, it only cost about, to ship it to the most remote place in the United States costs maybe $20, $25. now you can't ship an envelope for $125.
I know, it's crazy.
I can't do the stained glass as a shipping item anymore. And then I thought, well, you know what, I should do the paintings. Got all these set up. I've got all the pictures, just get them up on the internet and let people browse through them and see what they like. And
it's
try to
fabulous.
help
I
them.
put the link for your art gallery up on the liner notes for this when I posted
Oh,
it this
okay.
morning. So people can just click and go over and see your work and order stuff.
Yeah, it's
And
pretty active. I get orders all the time, I hardly ever seem to be the same. Like, not everybody going, oh, I want this one. And then somebody else going, oh, I want that one. I want that one. But yeah, it's just mirrors people's varied tastes of, what they want or what fits into their environment. Like I said, it's color wise. I try to give some suggestions because some people don't know anything, about selecting art. And I'm like, well, there's a little section there you can read. Depends what you're trying to do. If you want the color to pop, then you want the contrasting color. If you want it to harmonize and blend in so you don't have something on your wall that pops out, then this is why you would select these, colors. Or, if you're into a theme, then you're looking for the theme, pop art or flowers or nature, abstract, modern looking stuff, then people are only going to look at those.
well, this has been such a treat, Stanley. And
Thank you.
you're like a real regular person. And I am
a real regular person.
You are. And it's crazy to me because you were Chip for all of my life. So it's just lovely to see what a grounded and productive and you such a varied career of excellence in so many areas. And
thanks.
Thank you so much for doing this.
Going too. Yeah, I still have my production company. So I don't know if you took a look there at First Team Productions.
I did.
Yeah, we still have some projects. We literally had to stop. I had a TV pilot funded, actually two. One was a sitcom, the other was a talk show, and I just couldn't do the production. I was worried about getting people sick, and I was the executive producer on both of them. And I got, if there's somebody gets COVID on my watch or dies, I don't want that on my conscience. So yeah, we had to give the investor his money back. And anyway, I'm just sort of feeling comfortable about going out there and see if we can get these things funded and shot again. So
did you have COVID, by the way? I lead a band of the COVID.
Yeah.
You did?
It was ridiculous. I went 3 years, got the 2 regular shots, 2 boosters, and then finally about, I think it was August last year, out of nowhere, I got COVID. And then I gave it to Paula. She got it. And she had it for about a week. I had it for about 3 weeks. And then we just got another booster. So I don't know how good it was, but I just figured, well, we got it over with. Plus we got COVID, so we should be pretty safe. It didn't kill us yet. So, and I don't think I have long-term stuff going on. So I feel great, except for my leg didn't, but maybe that's what COVID does. It takes your leg out.
No, I haven't had COVID and I have leg stuff. We're just getting old.
Yeah, I think that's what that was.
We're just getting old. Stanley, thank you so much.
Thank you so much. It was great talking with you.
It was lovely to meet you. Absolutely.
Nice meeting you too.
Thank you. Nice